Hello, friends. Hello, friends. A tradition unlike any other.
Oh, my goodness. In your life, have you seen anything like that?
There it is! Adam Scott, a life changer. Mashed potato!
Here it comes.
This is the 19th Tee podcast. Kieran Marsh, Nathan Drudy back with you, Drew. It's so good to have your company. It's been a little while, probably not in the ears of our listeners. There has been some semi-regular program happening, but due to, events in life and other such things, we did give up one Monday evening, as we should have, to watch the mighty Tillies. There's been a lot happening around the country and in our little worlds too. So it's good to be back. And back in a busy week, my friend. We've had the final women's major of the year over the weekend. The FedEx Cup Playoff Championships are heating up. We've got the Australian summer starting in earnest, which sounds weird to say at the back end of August, but a lot on, my friend.
Yes, we do. It's an exciting time. And I mean, as you said, there is a lot happening, not only in the world of golf, but in the world of sport, which is exciting as well. So, shout out Matildas early on. But, good to be chatting golf again after what's been a couple of weeks away from the recording studio, as they say.
I think we should start in earnest with the AIG Women's Open Championship, given it is a major and given it is the final women's major of the year. Lilia Vu, she bookends the year. Wins her second of the year. She won the first of the year in the Evian and wins the final in quite a commanding performance. It's very different. She came from behind. In fact, 4 shots back to win the Evian Championship in the final round. And I think going into a Sunday in the final group in the lead of the tournament is a different kettle of fish altogether. She seemed to handle it as comfortably as she did from coming from behind in the Evian. She is a class player, Lilia Vu. And anytime you're talking about one individual wrapping up 2 of the year's majors, you're talking about a serious golfer.
Well, you're not wrong. I mean, what a performance today, particularly. I mean, 67 on a Sunday to win by 6 strokes, 1 bogey. I mean, you look at the rest of the field there, and there aren't many scores in the 60s. I mean, Alison Corpuz has had a 69. There are a couple of 68s further down the leaderboard, but largely irrelevant in terms of the grand scheme of things. Most of the players inside the top 10 were shooting in the 70s over par today. So, yeah, she's done a hell of a job to, I guess, back up her good performance on Saturday as well in terms of we talk about playing well over the final 36 holes. She's gone 67. So it was a hell of a performance to win very comfortably by 6 strokes and pocket 1.3 mil as well, if you don't mind.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Like, I think listening to a lot of other commentary around the women's game, probably in the last 12 to 18 months, one of the, I suppose, critiques of women's majors is that it's such an open ball game. I think often when you go into a men's major, irrespective of whether this plays out from a results point of view, we're often talking about the same group of 4 or 5 people that we expect to challenge. Mm-hmm. And I suppose if you look back at results, some of your best players in the world, you're talking about your Nelly Cordes, your Lydia Ko's, your MB Parks, like they haven't necessarily been playing exceptionally well, particularly Nelly. Like her major record of late is quite disappointing, albeit she has had a run with injury. But, Lilia Vu's bucked that trend in winning 2 in a year, starting to stand up as a serious performer on this stage. And I think I quite enjoy how open the women's game is, but I do also appreciate the fact that maybe you've got someone here who is starting to elevate herself on the bigger stages, because she doesn't necessarily back this up week in, week out. I mean, you look at someone like Celine Boutier, who's had a couple of wins, from a tour perspective recently. I think she won in consecutive weeks, not all that long ago. Now she's, sat outside the top 10 here, but you've got someone like Lilia Vu who seems to peak. I'm reticent to say Brooks Koepka-esque, but when she gets to the bigger stages, that's when she steps up, right?
That's what I was just going to say. I mean, if you're going to make a comparison to the men's game, it's a little a la Brooks Koepka. And I mean, for many years, I mean, perhaps we criticised Brooks for not caring enough week to week and not showing up week to week. And I don't think we're at that point with Lilia just yet. But I mean, it's hard to go past having won 2 majors in the same year. I mean, obviously the women play 5 majors, but so there's more an opportunity to do it. But albeit, it's still a very, very good effort to win 2 of the 5 majors, and again beating. Of course, this is going to sound ridiculous, but beating a super strong field. Charlie Hull, it was there for the taking for Charlie Hull, really. 3 South Korean players next. We know how strong they are. Ewing, Yin, Cow, and Andrea Lee. There's such a depth of talent across the women's game that we've spoken about, but you're completely right that she's starting to separate herself now that she's definitely got 2 majors this year, but she's playing nice golf, maybe perhaps a little more consistently anyway.
Charlie Hull's an interesting name there you mentioned, and obviously again congratulations to Lilia Vu. She played this Walton Heath course, which presented many, many challenges, as you can see from the scorecard, so much better than anyone else did, Lilia Vu. But Charlie Hull's an interesting one. I mean, she's performed quite well the final 2 majors of the year. She had a ripping run at Baltusrol. And then now she's come here to Walton Heath in her backyard, essentially, to finish runner-up, albeit 6 strokes back. I loved, and I don't know if you saw this, but her post-round interview today, she, and I'm paraphrasing here, but said something along the lines of, I want to go and hit balls until my hands bleed. I'm that disappointed. And, I think that, that comes off the back of, that famous line from her in the final round of the last major where she was going for it on the 72nd hole, saying shy girls don't get the sweets.
Yeah.
So she's got an incredible attitude as Charlie Hull, and I don't necessarily think she's all that far off. She threatened, to your point, she'd be disappointed with today. I mean, I'm doing the maths here now and I'm going to do them poorly, but I think she was either a stroke off or equal with maybe a stroke off Lilia Vu going into the final round. And, they've had remarkably different days, but Charlie Hull putting together an impressive back into the year from a majors perspective.
Yeah, well, I think perhaps even I'm going to get this wrong, but she was definitely leading the tournament throughout as well. So you might have been right that she was either 54-hole leader or co-leader anyway. I mean, she is such a consistent player. I mean, looking at her record, she's finished inside the top. Her worst finish across the majors of her best performances is T6 at the Women's PGA Championships. She's finished T2 at the Chevron and the US Women's Open. She's finished, this was her best finish at the Women's British Open, and T3 at the Evian, and 3 of those have come in the last 18 months. So she's building a good record, but we know that she is such a talented player. And for her to, I guess, let one slip realistically, as you mentioned, this was in her backyard. So I'm sure, whether that gets to people, we often talk about whether it might the moment might be too much, but she's a hell of a player is Charlie Hull. And I think, she's probably got a major in her, but I think as to what we were just talking about, the depth of the game in the women's draw is starting to get very, very deep, and she'd want to win one soon, I guess.
You mentioned, I tend to agree, and we talk about the wide open nature of particularly women's majors. You get the sense that it's often referred to as catching lightning in a bottle, winning a major. Well, equally so, maybe not a bottle, maybe one of those finger length hourglass. It's type of situations for the women's games where you got to capture lightning, and given the depth of the field, you talk about letting it slip. I'm going to jump a few names down the leaderboard. Ali Ewing, Druids, was 10 under through 36 holes. 4 under through the first round doesn't jump out at you too much because there are a couple of 3 unders, a couple of 2 unders. So she didn't have a massive lead after the first round. But then to go 6 under, I think she was literally like 6 shots out in front.
Yeah. It was a long way.
Yeah, after 36 holes. And she's gone 6 over collectively through the final 36 holes to finish at 4 under and a tie for 6. So she'd be, I'd suggest, bitterly disappointed given where she was. 14 under wins the tournament. She was 10 under through 2 rounds. It's one she'll look back on with a decent amount of regret, I would think.
Undoubtedly. I mean, I think it's funny. There's always got to be players in the field who have regret about every tournament, right? But when when you are so far out in front, you start 68, 66, and then to just really, the arse falls out of the performance over the weekend. And as we say, just couldn't put the brakes on, realistically. Just true Mendoza for Ali Ewing over the weekend.
Interesting.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. One of the great Mendoza performances for Ali Ewing. Drudes, briefly from an Australian's perspective, it wasn't pretty reading from a scorecard point of view for the Aussies. Grace Kim, adds another chapter to a relatively impressive season for Grace. She's certainly held her own, I think, overseas. And look, a tie for 36 is not necessarily where she would want to be finishing the final major of the year. But she is the highest finishing Aussie. It's not great reading across the rest of the board. Minjee Lee, she was 3 under through 36 holes, obviously in a bunch that were a fair way off Ali Ewing, but certainly you thought could contend, and she goes 8 over through the final 36, which is pretty disappointing. She's an next best at a tie for 50th. And then a lot of names missing the cut. Our good friend Steph Kyriakou didn't make the weekend, neither did Sarah Kemp, neither did Hannah Green, or Kelsey Bennett, who I just want to make a quick mention of because she actually qualified the weekend prior, one of the final qualifying events, to get her place at Walton Heath. A couple of rounds there, didn't make the weekend, nor did Lydia Ko from an Australasian perspective. But yeah, not a great week for our Australian women.
No, it hasn't. It wasn't, unfortunately. And I think, you look at some of the names that missed the cut more broadly, Marshy. It's a really impressive list of names that actually didn't make the weekend. Tavatanikit, Henderson, Buhai, Yuka Sasso, Kyriakou, as you mentioned, Stacey Lewis, Mel Reid, all of them were at 3 over. Saganda, Kupcho, Sagstrom, Jatanagan. There's a lot of players there that we would be expecting to not only make the cut, but certainly compete. Shibuno, Lauren Coughlin. I can read them all out here. Lexi Thompson. There were heaps that were very, very disappointing to not be playing the weekend. Maria Farsi at 10 over, 78, 76. That's bad golf. We've got to call it out when it is. So yeah, disappointing for a lot of players, but to back your point up, I think particularly for our Aussies, we would have loved to have seen them a little bit higher, and there's no doubt that I'm sure they're feeling it more so than we are.
I think it's a neat segue what you've mentioned there to kind of my final point on this tournament, and it's not necessarily related to this year's Women's Open Championship, more what it maybe throws forward to in terms of the Solheim Cup, Drudes. We are just over a month away from the 18th edition of the Solheim Cup to be played in Andalusia in Spain. So the European women hosting this time round. And I think this tournament, you're not going to get too many more opportunities to see these players before teams are selected. And I wonder just maybe if this asks more questions than it provides answers. Because if you look on face value, you'd look at the little flags that I'm looking at on the leaderboard and you think, geez, the Americans are doing well, aren't they? They're looking at 5 or 6 in the top 10. But outside of Lilia Vu and maybe Alison Corpuz, they're not necessarily names that you'd expect. Angel Yin's probably right on the knuckle in terms of making it in to the American team or not. But Ali Ewing, probably not. Andrea Lee, probably not. Certainly Alison Lee, not at all. They're not the Americans you'd expect. You talk about your Quarters missing, your Megan Kang's missing. Lexi Thompson doesn't even make the weekend. It's an interesting question that the Americans will certainly be asking themselves when it relates to selecting their side for the Solheim Cup, Drudes.
Totally. I'm looking at the current standings right now, and this is as of the 8th of August. So last week, this is on the Solheim Cup website. Their team currently, the qualifiers, Nelly Corder, Lilia Vu, Alison Corpuz, Megan Kang, Kupcho, Danielle Kang, Lexi Thompson. That's their top 7. And then they've got their Rolex World Rankings, which is Rose Zhang and Angel Yin. And then there are obviously 3 players to come as part of the team captain selection, which I believe is Stacey Lewis. And I think I don't want to take anything away from Rose Zhang, but when you've got someone like Rose who's only just come onto the professional ranks, and there's no doubt that she's going to be a generational player, right? She's a phenomenal talent. But when you've got someone like Rose coming in and beating out all these experienced players, I think it says something a little bit about the depth of the US team at the minute. So, yeah, I think if you're the European team, you're probably feeling pretty good about things at the minute. And I want to reiterate, that's not a knock against Rojang at all. I think it's just more a description of the depth of where the US team might be at.
And I think conversely, you've got a player like Charlie Hull finishing, in outstanding fashion at the back end of the major year, a couple of runner-up finishes. Suzanne Pedersen, the European captain for Suncoast, should be thrilled to have someone like that playing in the form that she's in, because she's got a lot of great players at her disposal. But Hull, for me, is kind of like your Poulter of the European Solheim Cup. She's the heart and soul. She is the barometer in many respects. And then if you're looking down, you've got a lot of other players that didn't necessarily threaten this weekend, but they're finishing well. Lynn Grant, Celine Boutier, who I mentioned, had some outstanding form in the LPGA in recent weeks. Anna Norquist, I'd suggest the European women's side has taken a great deal of confidence comparatively out of this tournament.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, their team at the minute, Stark, Boutier, who qualify on the Solheim Cup points and Rolex World Rankings, Maguire, Georgia Hall, Charlie Hull, Lynn Grant, Carlotta Saganda, Adam Nordquist, and they've got 4 picks, right? So they've got the extra captain's pick there, which gives them a little more flexibility, but a very experienced team as well. So no doubt, I completely agree with what you're saying, and I think that the Europeans would have to be favourites heavily, even given, probably more so the fact that it's in Spain this year as well, largely on their home soil. So for Carlotta Saganda, she'll be crossing everything that she gets on that team automatically. If she doesn't, I suggest she's probably going to be a captain's pick, but that'll be a special one for her to be playing at home.
100%. No, I think, Drew, it's obviously a lot of team golf coming down the pipeline between the Solheim Cup and, of course, the Ryder Cup coming up at Marco Simone Golf in Rome. So it's one of our favourite parts of the biannual calendar is when we wrap around to these team events, and plenty to come from that perspective, looking at those 2 tournaments. In a few weeks' time. That'll probably do us from the AIG Women's Open for 2023. So congrats again to Lilia Vu, our champion for this year. We move over to the FedEx Cup playoffs, Druids. Things heating up. We've narrowed it down to the top 50 for the BMW Championship coming up this week. But Lucas Glover wins the FedEx St. Jude. It's his second win in a row. I believe, I'm not speaking out of turn, suggesting it's the first time he's won a FedEx Cup playoff event as well, because obviously the first of 3 events, the FedEx St. Jude, as we go into this bitter relegation battle, the genuine cut. You're not coming back next week here. We've got a top 50 moving through, but Glover's performances across the last 2 weeks have catapulted him, I believe, into second spot, if I'm not mistaken, in the rankings, which is not something I would have thought I would be saying. Lucas Glover sitting in the top 2 or 3 players heading into the second week of the FedEx Cup playoffs for 2023.
Crazy, isn't it? What a world. What a time to be alive, Marshy. We've got the Matildas in the semi-finals, and we've got Lucas Glover winning 2 PGA tournaments in a row and 2 tournaments at the pointy end of the season as well. I mean, you often forget that he's a major champion. Well back in the day, but in sort of 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago now. I mean, yeah, it's quite phenomenal, actually. And I do love all this sort of, this time of the year when things, particularly Ryder Cup, I think he got thrown a question straight after. You might have his answer there, but he got asked about, were you thinking about the Ryder Cup? Do you think this is going to help? Blah, blah, blah. And he basically said, well, I haven't thought about it until the last 15 minutes. So,
yeah,
he started, it was something like that. I don't know if you've got it there, but yeah,
I don't have the verbatim quote, but I did see what you're talking about.
Something like that. 4 rounds in the 60s, as a lot of players did have this week as well. And obviously to get it done in a playoff over Patrick Cantlay, who I'm sure we'll have a brief moment on as well. I think his projected standing, according to the PGA Tour website right now, is 4th. 64 in the second round too, if you don't mind, just to light things up. Strong performance, and you can't knock winning form. So good on Lucas Glover.
Only the 3rd player, here's a stat for you, in the last 40 years, aged 43 or older, to win in consecutive weeks in the PGA Tour. So he joins Vijay Singh, who did it in 2008 at the age of 45, and Hale Irwin, He did it in 1990, also at the age of 45. Look, Drews, I think it's I was about to say patently absurd. Maybe not that strong. I think it would be pretty crazy to suggest he's going to play Ryder Cup, but he's just won in consecutive weeks. He's just won the first week of the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
If he goes and has a top 5 at the BMW, you almost have to. You start to entertain picking the genuinely hot hand because Zach Johnson's going to have some difficult decisions on his hands. People are absolutely thirsty for Justin Thomas to be picked in this team, and I didn't necessarily want to spend any more than 30 seconds talking about this, but you only have to look as far back as last week at the Wyndham when he was trying to get in to the playoffs, and for a guy that was sitting on the brink of the 75. Remarkable. It was like no one else was playing the tournament. I thought it was gross, to be honest, how much attention he got for a guy that's been playing dog shit golf for 18 months.
Yeah.
Entertaining round, sure, but so I just think Zach Johnson's got some difficult decisions to make because he's probably got players in the team telling him to go with players like JT. His heart's probably telling him to go there. And there's nothing to suggest based on previous form that Thomas doesn't get into that environment and play his absolute socks off. But it's a gamble. And when you've got a guy like Glover who's clearly in form, it's difficult. It's going to be difficult to deny. So it's a fascinating equation.
Right now, you're Zach Johnson. Who are you picking?
Look, is it an either or?
Glover or Thomas?
Glover.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing I say this, I shouldn't shoot off without doing my research, but I'm prone to do that on this show, so why stop now? I've not seen Thomas's intention to go to Europe because those are his options now. He does have options to go and play on the DP World Tour in the next couple of weeks. I haven't seen him put up his hand to do that. So again, I could be wrong and he may pop up and do that, but that's what I'd want to see. If I was the captain, I wouldn't want to see a guy sit on his hands or, head down to the range at Isleworth Country Club or wherever he's closest to there, his Florida residence, and just hit balls. I'd want to see him go and play tournament golf. Show me you want it. So if it's an either or right at this very moment, I'm taking Lucas Glover.
Totally fair. I think just very quickly to back that up, I can't see JT being on the Ryder Cup team right now.
Yeah, it's
I just don't think you can. Their current team locked in, qualified. Scotty Scheffler, Wyndham Clark, so they're locked in and qualified. Then you've got Brian Harman, Brooks Koepka, Xander Schauffele, and Pat Cantlay, and then you got 6 captains picks. And I just cannot see how you could pick him right now as one of them. And I liken it very similar to the 2019 President's Cup when we were debating whether Jordan Spieth should be on the team, and I was adamant that he shouldn't be.
You were adamant,
and I think for good reason. I just don't think you can pick him. But I mean, maybe from a team experience perspective, I don't know, because the Euro team is looking very good. Rory and Rahm are both automatically qualified. You've got Bobby Mack, Hovland, Tyrrell Hatton, and Tommy Fleetwood are your other 4 with 6 to come. So, it's going to be interesting.
There's just so many guys, right? That Zach Johnson, he's only got 6 picks left. And you look at the people who aren't in that team. Spieth is going, I guarantee that. You've got Burns, you've got Hovland, you've got Homer, you've got Cameron Young, you've got Ricky Fowler, you've got there's just so, and I've barely scratched the surface there. There's so many guys who you could pick that. But I wouldn't be surprised if he does defer. There'll be a lot of people internally within the team with loud voices, I'd suggest, campaigning for Justin Thomas, and ultimately that's probably where Zach Johnson would defer for the sake of a happy dressing room. So, lots to come there and fascinating. Just very briefly on this tournament, so Cantlay goes down on the first playoff hole, put his tee shot into the water on 18, the first playoff hole. Not overly surprising to see him go 10 under through the first to the last 36 holes, then 6 under in the final day. I think it was round of the day, if I'm not mistaken, to get himself into a playoff. Classic Paddy Cantlay. And he goes into a tournament now, having lost in a playoff, goes to the BMW where he's a defending champion. He loves this time of year. Always, inevitably stands up in the playoffs. I don't know if it's a limited field event. I don't know if it's courses that fit his nature, but geez, he loves, these last couple of events of the season, Drew.
Yeah, cool. Good on him. He can do whatever he wants. Don't care. He's still irrelevant.
Moving on. Rory McIlroy and Tommy Fleetwood, to your point, both played very well. They finished one stroke, respectively, outside of the playoff. How's this for a stat? Tommy Fleetwood was his 22nd top 5 finish on the PGA Tour. It's the most of any player on the PGA Tour without a win in the last 40 years.
Yeah, right.
He's the first player in the history of the tour to surpass $20 million in official career earnings without a victory. So for all the reasons why I picked him to win the Open and for all the reasons why I was beating my chest when he was, 5 shots under par and looking like an absolute peacock after the first round, he is right there. And whether or not it ever translates to a victory on tour, let alone a major, something tells me that he's going to have a massive say in this Ryder Cup next month at Marco Simone. And something also says to me that might mean more to him than anything else.
Yeah, totally. I'm just looking at his past results, actually. His victories. Last one was nearly a year ago, 13th of November. We went back-to-back at the Nedbank Golf Challenge over on the European Tour. But yeah, starting to build a record that he probably doesn't really want in terms of not winning over on the US side. I mean, I think back to guys like Colin Montgomery, who went over and played for many, many moons and never won on the US soil on the tour. So yeah, I think you're right. In a lot of ways, Tommy Fleetwood, Tyrrell Hatton, just looking at the European side, even though you've got guys like Rory and Rahm there, I mean, those guys are the new age Poulter and the likes. So yeah, yes. They're going to have a massive say come the next handful of weeks anyway. And look, he's not playing. I'm not saying he's playing shit golf, but he just needs to finally break through for that win.
Would be nice. I'd certainly appreciate it. I feel somewhat vindicated by continuing to back him in. There's only one other name specifically I want to mention because obviously we advance through to the BMW next week and then, of course, to the Tour Championship the week after. So not a great deal of value in zeroing in on this tournament because there's a lot more serious golf to come across the next fortnight. But I did want to speak briefly on Cam Davis, who had a ripper tournament, 4 under, 3 under, 1 under, 3 under to finish 11 under and just, 4 strokes outside the playoff. Eventual tie for 6. I think he jumped 17 spots today with his 3 under. And he was one of only 2 players, himself and Hideki Matsuyama, who I believe went birdie, eagle, par, birdie, or some combination of those 4 in the final 4 holes to jump himself up into the top 50 and keep his season alive. So the top 50 had only 2 changes from the beginning of the week. It was Cam Davis and Hideki Matsuyama jumping in to keep their seasons alive. So big shout out to Cam Davis. He's booked his spot at the BMW last week, and now only 2 Aussies remain. It's himself and Jason Day, who is currently in 21st position, I believe, in the top 50, who advanced. So yeah, credit to Cam Davis. His season was on the line, and he produced to finish, in a tie for 6 and keep himself fresh for the BMW Championship.
Yeah, I mean, and generally the statistics weren't terrible for the week. I mean, 7th around the green, 7 strokes gained, tee to green, 36th in putting. I mean, he'd certainly like to be a little bit better than that. But it was a pretty solid all-round week for Cam Davis, and he's had a good season, I think, in totality. And yeah, hopefully he can shoot up the leaderboard a little bit more at the next one and make it through to the final. You know, what do they call it? The grand stage, or they market it as some bullshit.
The grander stage, something like that. Yeah. That's exactly right. So Jay Day, just briefly, tie for 52. He was 2 under for the tournament. Obviously, he was well within the top 50 bubble going into this tournament, but didn't necessarily light the house on fire this week. So let's hope he finds something to keep his season alive at the BMW Championship. Drew, that'll probably do us, I'd suggest, on the PGA Tour. Time to swing home. Because as remarkable as it sounds, on the 14th of August, we're on the verge of the Australian summer starting Seems crazy. The Northern Territory PGA Championship, your favourite trophy in world golf,
Yeah,
is up for grabs
it is.
in just 3 days' time.
I think it is the best trophy hands down. It's not even a conversation. Very exciting to be having this on the tournament. We did have a year off last year from the NT PGA Championship. Austin Batista is there for the what do you call it? Defending champion from a couple of years ago. So I'm looking forward to this one. I mean, I know it hasn't been, but it feels like it's been quite a while between drinks for the Aussie Tour. I know we only finished a couple of months ago, but geez, it feels like it's been quite some time. Good field assembled. Jake McLeod, Louis Dobler, of course, defending champion, Austin Batista, Jay McKenzie, our mate Pikey, Phelps, Wazzers in there, Lincoln Ty, Hayden Barron, fresh off the Open Championship. Gailey's back to crack into it. There's a really, really good field of people, of players assembled. So I'm really looking forward to it. And I was just looking up Hayden Hopewell because I don't know. Come back to me on that.
Okay, well, let me just pick that up to say we're going. You pad. I'll pad. You research. Yeah. So we're going back to Palmerston. Palmerston Golf and Country Club, which is, of course, the traditional host. At the traditional time slot as well, we return to August. It seems strange for us, but it's obviously been where it's traditionally been played in terms of the calendar. So since last we were there in March of 2022, the venue's undergone $8 million in major work streams, I'm reading here. Nothing that you'll see really by way of the tournament, mini golf course improvements to the pro shop, clubhouse, etc. But certainly a bit of a facelift for Palmerston. I know it's a favourite of a lot of the guys on tour, the opportunity to go up and play in the top end. And, it reflects in some previous winners. So Jordan Zunix on the winners roll call, Trav Smythe, Dan Nisbet, our good mate Brett Rankin, Pikey, as you say, and Austin Batista most recently. So, look, it's a great start. Obviously, we've got a little bit of a lull from this tournament through to the West Australian swing in October, but competitive golf back in earnest here on the PGA Tour of Australasia. And to your point, some ripping names. A lot of guys who've been playing golf all around the world have come home to start their seasons proper up in Darwin. Yeah.
What I was looking for was Josh Greer. Is making his turn professional and will be making his pro debut up in Darwin there. So best of luck to Josh Greer, West Australian talent, very good golfer. So looking forward to seeing him in the pro ranks officially. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this one. There's some, as I say, it's a really good field assembled. And yeah, it'll be a good to kick things off for what's going to be a massive summer. As we've spoken about, Marshu, there's such a good list of tournaments that has been put together by the tour this year, and I'm looking forward to it coming over to the West, 5th to the 8th of October, the WA Open, then the 12th to the 15th out in Cal. So yeah, looking forward to what's to come, Marshy, and getting back into the Aussie golf, which you'll hear a lot more of on this show.
Just scrolling down the list, unless I'm going to come across his name. No, so it doesn't appear as though Jeffrey Guan is in the field.
Interesting.
Yeah, is so. Obviously, we've kept a pretty close eye on Jeffrey Guan's amateur career. Most recently, if and when he makes the decision to turn professional. And I can't see him here. So, interesting. That Jeffrey Guan, obviously one of, if not the most promising young talents coming out of Australia, certainly from a male perspective in recent years, doesn't appear to be playing in the first tournament. We do know, Drew, we know all too well he absolutely loves the West Australian tournaments.
Yeah.
So we'll keep a close eye on October. I'll be completely surprised if he's not there on when we roll over WA from WPGA and Cal. But yeah, doesn't appear to be starting up in Darwin. Let's have a pick. I think we're nothing if not daring. And it seems strange. Well, not strange. It's a tournament. We often make picks. We will do each and every week leading in and across the Australian summer. But first one's always hard, and we haven't seen a lot of these guys we know to the point that, certainly some very different preps, whether it's been, Gailey. I'm just looking at his name here. He's been over in the States. He's been playing a few Monday Qs. Jake McLeod's been playing the Pro-Am series here in Queensland. So just incredibly different paths of preparation to get to Palmerston. But if you had to pick out a name, Droots.
Oh, God. Very difficult. Very difficult. Look, as you say, there's not any form lines to go on. So I will... Who am I going to take here? Give me Nathan Barbieri. I think he had a good season last year. So give me Nathan Barbieri to win it's not actually the opening tournament. It's the second tournament of the season. First one on Aussie soil for the year. So give me Nathan Barbieri.
The opener was in PNG, is that right?
It was
technically
Port Moresby Open. Yeah.
Yes,
so
that's right.
If you want more detailed recap on the Port Moresby Open, not from this year, go back and listen to Daniel Gale's episode because he just about gave us every shot that he hit in his final round there when he went up and won a handful of years ago. So Nathan Barbieri for me. Who are you going to throw at the dartboard here?
Hayden Barron.
Okay. Yep.
Let's have Hayden Barron.
Nice.
I think he would have been a wonderful opportunity to go over and play at the Open. I think he would have been ultimately disappointed not to play the weekend. I get the sense he's probably come home and grinding there. He's at the West Australian Golf Club, isn't he?
He's WA
home track.
WA Golf Club. Yeah.
I'd suggest he's been tonguing for the opportunity to get back on the course. So Hayden Barron for me to take out the NTPGA.
I know this isn't our season preview, but we can't, pick out some winners and stuff like that of major things. But is there anyone that you're really expecting big things of this year? Before we get into the Aussie part of the season, anyway. I know. Who's the names on your list that you might have sort of in the black book, for example?
Couple of names for me.
Mm-hmm.
Laurie Flynn, Loza. I think I kind of felt this way last year, and it was probably not necessarily the season he would have anticipated. I'm seeing a lot of, and hey, Instagram is not reality.
No.
Let me be the first to say that. I understand that, but I'm seeing a lot of work going in from the big lefty, and I'm a fan. I love the chat we had with Loz. So I'm expecting and hoping to see some good things from Loz. I also feel like I say this name literally every summer since we've been on air, so to speak. I'll be shocked, in fact, if Gailey doesn't have a good summer.
Yeah.
The guy looks like he worked his tail off over in the States, had a little bit of success.
Yeah.
But I think he's primed to come home, and I'm not going to say put together a David Micheluzzi type summer because Mika's summer last year was phenomenal. I'm not necessarily sure we'll see that repeated. I don't necessarily think it's a sustainable summer, what he had last year, but I get the sense that Gailey's got the opportunity to, put together the type of season where he looks back and he's got, a handful of top 10s, 2 or 3 top 5s, and maybe a win or two, which really puts him in the conversation from an order of merit perspective. So I like Gailey. And then there's a bunch of others. I mean, I expect kind of the same of Hayden Barron. I've picked him to win, but I expect him to kind of come home and do well. Louis Dobler, I want to see a bit out of. And I think Jake McLeod's the first name on this list. He finished last summer really, really well. I know he's been playing pretty impressively on the Pro-Am circuit up here in Queensland in recent weeks. And I think I know he just melts the ball. So I'm hoping to see Jake McLeod back to where we know he can be. So look, there's a couple of names for you. Reserve the right to cheer the house down for our mate, the Wizard, every single week, irrespective of any other player. But there's a couple of names. We'll obviously have a comprehensive preview. We tossed around the idea of looking at it tonight, but there's, we're playing this tournament this weekend, and we're not in WA until October. Only half the season's been locked in at this stage. I know people in HQ or Melbourne are working tirelessly to get the back half of the season locked away. So I think once we've got a bit more shape, we're closer to that WA swing in October will do a comprehensive preview of the Australian summer. And to Drew's point, plenty of conversations happening in the back end to ensure that our coverage remains at a level that that the tour deserves, and it reflects what we've done across the last couple of years in terms of our focus on the Aussie tournament. So stay tuned.
Yes. I'll give you just a couple of names that I'm looking forward to
Please,
seeing.
please
because got to get out in front of these things, It's obviously hard to know as well because you don't know what players' plans are, right? Guys like Justin Warren, for example, missed a massive chunk of last year, probably maybe even the entire season, or most of the season anyway. Being overseas, so I've absolutely got him on the list. 4 players I do have that I am perhaps expecting big things of, or that I think will have good seasons. Shea Wolves-Cobb had a really good season last year. Just a really pure hitter of the ball, and will be certainly floating around the top of a lot of leaderboards. Joshy Armstrong, one of the longest hitters out there. I think he might have had a little bit of pro-am success over the off-season. He's another one to watch. Blake Collier has been working really hard on his game, and Mav Antcliffe as well. But obviously, depending on what he wants to do, whether he's here in Australia for the long haul or whether he's back overseas. So all of that can be taken with a grain of salt, as we don't know what players' individual plans are, but they're my players that I'm kind of looking at, Marshy.
Excellent. I agree, Drews, with all of those. I think Shea Wolves-Cobb's a great shout. He had a really good kind of finish with a wet sail back end of last year.
He did.
You'd expect that to continue. Just briefly, as it relates to home, also news in the past week, Minwoo Lee confirming his intention to return for the Australian Open in Sydney in December.
Mm-hmm.
I'd suggest he probably comes back for the PGA as well.
Probably.
But good to have him back. He's obviously not only through his performances, but he's gaining quite a cult following. He's Minwoo Lee over on the PGA Tour. It's certainly where he deserves to be. So this is important. We talk about the importance of our players coming home and playing our marquee tournament. So good to see Minwoo lock himself in for the Aussie Open.
He's doing plenty of work on TikTok. Let me tell you. I don't
let
know
him cook, as he says.
Yeah, let him cook. That's his thing. But no, good to see. Should we? Have you got anything else, or should we just mention Cam Smith obviously winning?
Yes, I do want to finish there
briefly. Yeah, go for it. Hit me with your thoughts, because it is. I just really want a better website for Live Golf. I mean, they've got so much money, and it's such an awful website.
Yeah. So look, not to get off on a negative note, but I tend to agree. Like, it's certainly not suggesting either of the mainstream tours have it absolutely locked down. We have our issues with the PGA Tour specifically on their website, but just a little bit more information, access to statistics, things of that nature. But look, Cam Smith's a winner, as are the Ripper GC boys.
Yeah.
Which is great for Jed. Love that for Jed.
Yeah.
He's sunk a pretty significant eagle in the final round as well to kind of solidify the lead for the Ripper GC boys. But that's their first, obviously not Cam's first individual win, but certainly the first team win for the Ripper GC team since the formation of the format. So, obviously Cam, Leash, Jed, and Jonesy. It's a really good win for them out at Bedminster. And Cam, I mean, I saw some ridiculous shots, including a fairway wood off a cart path.
Yes.
Which always defies my logic, to be honest. That you have the ability to hit it so clean that there's just zero contact with the asphalt. Anyway, my viewing of this side of the game, I won't lie to you, is narrowed to highlights and clips. I don't tune in to portions of the round, and that's a choice. It's not a criticism. It's not a reflection on what I think of the individuals involved. It's just a choice. Irrespective, it's Smithy's second win in 4 months, because he won 3 months. He won the week prior to the Men's Open Championship at the event in London. So he's in form. And if and when at a time in the future, pending the swirling winds of the macro global golf environment, the tours merge. I think he's shown enough, both at the last couple of majors, but also the way in which he's playing. When given the opportunity at these tournaments, that he's still one of the best players in the world. So,
yeah,
it's another good weekend for him. It's another good pay packet for him, and it's good to see the smile on his face.
It is. I still think it's hard to kind of understand exactly what it all means in terms of competitiveness of fields. I mean, the fields still aren't that strong, so I don't know. It's a tough one for me to really assess. But winning form is good form, and he's gone out and he's done that again. So good on him, and good. And to your point, good on the Ripper GC boys as well, because that will help. I think with a long way, because I mean Jed hasn't been playing the best golf on that tour, unfortunately. So I'm sure winning the team side of things will just make that a little easier anyway.
And I think just to spend no more than 60 seconds on Jed, I'm really happy for him. We had a conversation way back when all these tectonic plates started moving. I remember the conversation we had with Jimmy Emanuel, and he was kind of one example we picked out of like, what does the future hold for someone like Jed, who doesn't really have status? He gave that up to go and play live golf, and did so completely understandably, given how life-changing the opportunity would be for someone like him. But you strip all that away and just get back to the golf, it's been really challenging. He's been in a place where he probably hasn't been for a long time, because the trajectory was so rapid.
Yeah,
he was a highly touted junior, very successful amateur, having won the Australian Amateur, turns pro, goes back to his home course and wins his national PGA by the length of the straight. Like everything came so quickly, and then to kind of go onto a tour which is somewhat maligned, fall admittedly into a great team, and he's got a great support network around him, particularly with Cam, but his golf has struggled. And I think to see him not just be in a winning team, but to contribute to a winning team, I hope it means that he will come back this summer and play some meaningful rounds of golf, and factor again, because obviously got a very big soft spot for him here, but he's a quality player, and I like seeing him play good golf. So it's good to see.
I agree. I think that's well put. I think that's very well put.
Anything else?
I don't think so.
No. Should we spend? I mean, at the risk, I know we're aiming for under an hour, and I know you're keeping me on the clock here, and that's good. I like you keeping me accountable, because the drop off does happen. But I kind of feel a bit remiss not to spend just 2 or 3 minutes talking about what is the biggest story in the country, because we love our golf, and this is a golf podcast, and the people listening to this podcast love their golf. There's plenty happening in the world of golf. But I think it's undoubtedly kind of all second fiddle to the Matildas. And I kind of was thinking about this, having a chat over the weekend to a mate of mine. And I think a lot of people listening to this podcast, Dreads, would accuse me of being prone to hyperbole. But I genuinely believe, I feel like this is the closest to a Freeman moment we've had since Freeman. This is
That's fair.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
The manner in which it is, even down to the Daily Telegraph, as it was called today, and the Courier Mail that ran on Sunday up in Queensland. It's just the manner in which it has captured the imagination of large parts of the country. I've not seen anything like it for a long time.
Oh, it's phenomenal. I thought you were going to say the retirement of Nick Naitanui at the start. The biggest story of the day here in Western Australia.
Yes, one of the 4 pillars of the West Australian economy has fallen today. Nick Nat.
I must admit, shout out to Perth Now. They did post their retirement article, and the title was "What are we going to write about now?" I thought that was pretty good, actually. I did.
That's very good.
I rated that. Look, it was phenomenal. I mean, everyone. I think just it's just been a watershed moment for sport in Australia. I think more broadly, I think if you can strip back the women's football or the men's football or just the women's sport versus men's sport debate, I think just in general, it's been such a watershed moment. And I watched that penalty shootout on on Saturday and or watch the game. Organised to go to the pub with the boys to watch the game, and I couldn't tell you when the last time I've done that for a game of football generally is, right. And I just think it has encapsulated everyone, regardless of how you feel about soccer or football or whatever you want to call it, or what your position is on, men's sports versus women's sports. It's brought together a nation, and I think that's been such a heartwarming thing to see, because the way in which they've played and the way in which they've been so well respected by the community is something that's been amazing to kind of just watch it bring on. They've now got more Instagram followers than the Socceroos do, if that's, a metric of success. It's been incredible. And all I can hope is that it continues one more against the Poms on Wednesday night. Would be amazing. But even if it doesn't, I think it's still been an incredible success for that team particularly. And I don't know. It's just been fun to watch. It's been a hell of a ride to watch it. I think, we kind of came in with a little bit of expectation that maybe we should have got to maybe where we were on the weekend. And I think if we bowed out there, people's expectations probably would have been met. But, we're now so close. We're one game away from the final. So, it's quite incredible. So that's my elevator pitch.
I think they're a red-hot chance of beating the Poms. I mean, they're missing their best player in Lauren James, who had an absolute Zinedine Zidane type brain explosion and missed 2 games with the red card. And she's a massive out for them. And they are the defending Euro women's champions, and they're littered with absolute class and quality. But I also think the number of our players who play in the Women's Premier League and play alongside these players week in, week out at clubs like Arsenal and Chelsea, and that will be a huge benefit coming into this game. Like, I think it's a massive opportunity, and I tend to agree. Like, I think a huge success regardless, but I kind of feel like that's amplified if they get themselves through to the final. Like, it will be an incredible opportunity, I think, to play. And it kind of made me think, and this is where I'll kind of draw a line underneath it, but you often find people are almost embarrassed, or we get chipped as a country because people say, oh, your only history, your only culture, the only thing you hang your hat on is sport. And it's like, why is that something to be ashamed of?
Yeah.
When you see something like this unify an entire country. Yeah. Like, why is that? That shouldn't be a criticism.
Yeah.
Like, countries should be so lucky that they get to have moments like the one that we're having collectively, that, you go in on this morning at my work, it was the first 60 minutes of everyone talking about the game on Saturday night.
Yeah.
That's so fucking cool. And it should never be something we're ashamed of. We should be so proud of the fact that we have that, because we're a young country and we don't have a lot of history to hang our hats on. But the manner in which we punch so far above our weight globally in a sporting sense is something that we should punch our, is something we should hang our hats on. And these girls have shown, that we absolutely deserve to be in that conversation. It's just so awesome to watch what they're doing. It's excellent.
Yeah. Fingers crossed for Wednesday night. We might be here next Monday talking about a final, which would be very cool if that would be the case. But go the Matildas.
Up the bloody Tillies. All right, that'll do us. We've kept it under an hour, which is good. That's a good metric to keep. So we'll be back next week. Plenty happening. Obviously, the BMW Championship, probably a bit more Tillies to talk about. Lots of other stuff happening, and we'll obviously also look back on the NTPGA Championship. Drewster, pleasure as always, my friend. I'll catch you next week.